So, good morning to everyone who is joining us. Thank you so much for joining this workshop. I'm Dr. Emily Janowski. I'm the Director of Form, for those of you who don't know me, and we are joined by a lovely panel of people who have been incredibly generous with their time today. Some of them for the second, or even I think in the case of Dr. Awali, 10th time to participate in an event. So we're very, very lucky that they're willing to join us today and share their insights with all of you. Um, we'll start in a couple of minutes, so to allow people to filter in. I know for some people it's very early in the morning and some people it is appallingly late. So we just want to give everyone time to come in and get settled. This is a very practical workshop. It's part of our How to Be Open series. As you know, those of you who've joined us in the past, we have various types of events. We have the symposia, which are sort of broader discussions around sort of key concepts. Then we have webinars, which are very focused on maybe a particular product or a particular approach. And then we have our How to Be Open workshop series. And today we're really excited to be able to bring together a really fantastic group of panelists to discuss the sort of practical step-by-steps of how to support and advocate for open infrastructure in your institution. As we all know, those of us in the open science world in particular, but also in academia and scholarly communications more generally, we really rely very heavily on these open infrastructures. A lot of time people aren't aware that we're relying on them. And it's really important that we help as a region. We want to try and help boost support and engagement, conscious engagement with open infrastructure at all of the institutions and organizations that form part of the Form community. We have a few housekeeping slides first. Rima, if you could jump to the next slide for me. So most of you should hopefully be aware of Zoom. Those of you in the GCC, like I'm and Al Walid, have had to revert to COVID meeting approaches and COVID schooling recently with everything going on. So we are very, very aware of Zoom all over again. But for those of you who perhaps haven't been using it recently, you can move the windows around. If you feel that you have any technical issues or we're talking too fast, something I know I am guilty of quite a lot, use the raise hand icon and we'll get in touch with you independently via the chat to try and sort things out. You have two options to communicate with everyone. There is the chat, which, as you know, is the single speech bubble. And that'll be either visible on the bottom taskbar or in the More section with the three buttons on the bottom taskbar. Please use the chat to introduce yourself, to talk with each other. We love to know where everyone's from. We really do appreciate the chance to get to know our community. However, if you have a question for the speakers, there is going to be a Q&A at the end. We do suggest, so that your questions don't get lost, that you put them in the Q&A question drop down instead. That's the double speech bubble you can see here. Again, you can find it if it's not immediately visible on the bottom taskbar. You can find it if you see there's a bit at the bottom with the circle with three dots and more. There's a Q&A there. If we notice a question in the chat, we might contact you again separately and very politely ask you to pop it in the Q&A so that the panelists can see it for later. Next slide, please, Rima. For those of you who don't know us, just a brief recap of what the Forum for Open Research in MENA is. We are a non-profit membership organisation designed to support the development and implementation of open science policies and practices in the Arab world. Our focus is very much on supporting network building, localised resource creation, and really helping drive individual local communities and provide them with all the resources and contacts that they need. So if you are interested in learning more about us and you don't already know, please do get in touch either via the chat or directly via our website. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, our real vision is to support open science across the Arab world in as many different ways as possible. So also one other thing is if you feel that maybe there's an area that you would like support and we're not currently facilitating that, please do reach out and let us know. We're currently in the process of planning our 2027 schedule of community development activities and building our roadmap for the next batch of resources to be created. So let us know if there's a question, a burning question or issue you feel we're not addressing, and we'll be very happy to add that to our to-do list. Next slide, please, Rima. Again, brief overview of who comprises our network: researchers, librarians, policymakers, university leaders, and open science advocates. We have a huge number of members. Actually, we really need to update the slide. I think we're closer to 7,000 individuals now in our network. So, but there's a lot. There's a lot of people around. We need to update the slide. But, you are welcome if you don't know us already. And if you do know us and haven't perhaps been engaging as directly as you might be liking to, please do, as I said, reach out and we'd be happy to do more with you. Next slide. And yes, capacity building we've already talked about, so we can skip through these, I think, mostly. Rima, and just go to the jump ship straight to infrastructure, because I think most people have attended the last events. So today's speakers, we are hugely lucky, as I said, to have four really outstanding speakers helping us promote open science infrastructure to the region. Rosalie Lack is the SCOSS coordinator. Some of you will have seen the event we did with SCOSS earlier this year, and some of you might even have met Rosalie at the annual forum last year. Dr. Al-Walid is a staunch advocate of all things form, and we're very grateful for his continued involvement and patience as head of open and copyright at the Qatar National Library. Dr. Zaina is Assistant Dean for Research and Outreach at Zayed University. She is new to the form lineup, and we're very glad that she was able to join us today. Thank you. And Irina does so much globally for open access in particular and open science generally. We're hugely thrilled as well that she was able to join us. So without further ado, I will hand over to Al-Walid, who is chairing this session. And I hope you all have a very thought-provoking and informative morning.
So, good morning, everybody. Can you hear me fine? It's okay. So, hi, I'm Al-Walid from Qatar National Library, and thank you, Emily. It's great to see you again. And I'm really happy to be your moderator today, and thanks so much for joining wherever you are. And so Emily has done the introduction, so I'm really happy to be joined by my SCOSS colleagues, Rosalie, Irina, and Dr. Zaina, who recently joined the SCOSS board as well. And so today we're talking about how we can all support and advocate for open infrastructure, which is the foundation behind open science. And basically all the tools and platforms that we use every day need support, and they often depend on short-term funding or volunteers, and we're going to be hearing more about that later on. But the question is, or if we want open science to grow, we need to work together to keep this infrastructure strong. And we have a great lineup today, and I'm really looking forward to hearing all the different presentations. So what's the program for today, or the agenda, is that first, Rosie will get us started talking about what open infrastructure really means, why it needs our support, and then what is SCOSS all about. Then Irina will give us more of a kind of a global perspective, looking at open access and infrastructure. And then Dr. Zaina will bring things closer to home, looking at the research scene in the Arab region and sharing practical steps on how your institution can support these vital and important services. Of course, as Emily mentioned, we have Q&A in the end. So please add in your questions. I will come to that in the, after all the presentations are done. And let's try to keep this interactive. So please ask. We're here to kind of support your journey into supporting infrastructure. Now, before we start with Rosalie, I just wanted to give kind of a brief or a bit of a context of why this is important from a Qatar National Library perspective, or a National Library perspective. And so this is Qatar National Library. I do hope that you have a chance to visit, and I recognize some of the names in the chat, and many of you are our neighbors, so I do hope also you can come in. So the mission of Qatar National Library is to preserve our nation and region's heritage. And what we see is that academic research is a key part of that legacy. And by supporting open licensing, like Creative Commons licenses, we help authors keep their rights, and we can create a long-lasting kind of archive of knowledge from Qatar. And when we see open licensing work and how it links with open science is really embedded in copyright. So openly licensed material, whether it's journal articles, datasets, and images, allows us to kind of translate from English to Arabic, and that's one of the key goals that we have. also creating open education resources, and of course, long-term preservation, and what we call it long-term open access. And how we do this, or how we put this in action, are we have different initiatives. One of which is the Open Access Program, where we cover open access publication costs for researchers in Qatar. We have Manara, the Qatar Research Repository, which we collects, preserves various outputs from Qatar, both traditional and non-traditional, of course. We're very focused on open heritage, and with Qatar Digital Repository, where we host over 200,000 heritage items. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of why open science is good, and I think we're all in agreement that it is good. And I think what we're discussing today is how to make it kind of facilitate it and make it stronger. But what we can see in Qatar already, some kind of great signs of open science initiatives, from the Qatar University Digital Hub, which is the repository, to various open access publishers in Qatar, such as HBKU Press and Qatar University Press, and more recently Enolite, which is the QRDI Council portal, which allows for collaboration and open innovation between researchers in Qatar. Now, it's really important that, to talk about this challenge, is that open science needs open infrastructure solutions to work. And as we go through today's sessions, I want you to think about some things. This is just some points that keep in mind while we hear Rosalie, Irina, and Dr. Zaina speak. Open infrastructure requires financial support from communities to continue to be community-led and community-owned. But the question is, what happens when this infrastructure or the infrastructure solutions that you use, that we all use, are no longer available? And what happens if the free-to-use infrastructure acquired by commercial companies? Are they free to use again, or are we going to be paying more? So with that, I'd like to thank you for your attention. And now let's kick things off with Rosalie. So Rosalie, over to you. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that introduction. And thank you again to Form for hosting this webinar. Really appreciate it. And they're doing such great work. It's good to be involved with them. So again, I'm Rosalie Lack. I'm the SCOSS coordinator, and I'm so happy to talk to you today about open infrastructure and about SCOSS and our role in supporting a global infrastructure, but also your role in supporting this global open science ecosystem. So before I get started, I think it's really important that we have sort of shared understanding. So I wanted to just go a little bit back to the basics and define some terms for you to make sure we're all on the same page. So first of all, open access can broadly be, who can read research. So meaning that open access refers specifically to free and online availability of research outputs, such as peer-reviewed journals or books. And the aim is to eliminate barriers to accessing scholarly content, making research freely available online. And then moving to open science, which is how research is created and shared. So that means open science is about sharing all aspects of research output. So not just the end result, but also the data, the software code, even the peer review process itself, that be openly available, with the goal that this really does enhance collaboration and impact of research. We say open science is good research. And then finally, what we'll be focusing on today is open infrastructure. And so that really refers to the systems that make the open access and open science possible. And over time, we have this importance of long-term preservation. These are the things that we think about in the open infrastructure environment. So it refers to the tools, the platforms, for example, DSpace, many of you may be familiar with, or OJS from PKP. These are the tools, platforms, the systems that support open access and open science. And they are they're open for use and for contribution. So these three terms kind of underpin everything we're going to talk about again, but a focus today is, of course, on open infrastructure. And we know that open science is only as open as the infrastructure that it runs on. So the benefits that we can receive from open access and open science are really only fully realized when they run on open infrastructure. So even if research is open, if it becomes restricted in practice, it can become restricted in practice if the systems that host or index or preserve this research, if they're closed or controlled only by a few actors, then they are effectively no longer open. So that's why when we talk about open infrastructure, it isn't just a technical detail, it's really the foundation to open access and open science. And one final slide to kind of lay the foundation here today is that open infrastructure, just reinforcing this really important point, is that open infrastructure isn't just a tool. It's not just about open source or free open source software. It's really a commitment that we're making to a shared purpose and a long-term impact. So on this slide, we have, and these slides will be, of course, made available after the talk. So just to let you know, but on this slide, we have many benefits or really the principles of open infrastructure. So just to raise a couple to give you a sense of that. And I think one of the ones, of course, maybe most important, it's affordable by design. Because these open infrastructures are nonprofit organizations, they're not driven by profit. So their costs are kept low. They're also interoperable because they're based on open standards and open APIs that ensure that they can connect with each other and data flows and that data is not trapped in a system. You don't want to get in a situation where research output is trapped in a system and it cannot be shared, because that defeats the whole purpose of true research and being able to collaborate and work together. And finally, it's accessible to all. One of the principles is that it's accessible to all, that these services are available globally across institutions and regions without financial or technical barriers. So together, these principles really ensure open infrastructure remains resilient and, most importantly, aligned with our academic values over the long term. So to give you, like, what is this SCOSS thing? If you haven't heard of SCOSS yet, I'll just give you a brief overview here. So SCOSS is actually a model for how one might fund these open infrastructures. There are other models, but this is one model. So SCOSS is a nonprofit initiative. We were formed in 2017. At that time, there was this growing recognition that we were building these open infrastructures. And for example, like repositories, identifier systems, but they were struggling to remain financially sustainable. So the aim of SCOSS, and I'll go ahead and just read this for you, is to help sustain vital, non-commercial open infrastructure that supports implementation of open science. So each of these words is pretty important, that these infrastructures are vital. They have been deemed essential for the open science ecosystem. They are non-commercial. They're open, and they do, of course, support open science. And we, of course, believe strongly that open science has to be built on open infrastructure. So SCOSS as an organization is, we bring together a range of voices. So we have library consortia, we have universities, and we are representing all regions of the world. So SCOSS is housed in Spark Europe, but its reach and its impact is global. So you can see from these various logos, the different organizations that work together to form SCOSS's governance. So how does it work? So it is an interesting model of how SCOSS works. I started, now it's 2 years, and it's really fascinating how it works, and it's one I hadn't seen before. So let me just take a moment to explain to you. So basically, SCOSS has two main areas. So we endorse infrastructures for investment. And the way that works is that we open infrastructures annually will apply to become SCOSS endorsed infrastructures each year. We review those infrastructures and we look deeply at these infrastructures. We're looking at their governance, we're looking at their financial stability, their community engagement, what is their strategic planning, And then each year we select 2 to 4 infrastructures to be SCOSS endorsed infrastructures. And once they're endorsed, what we do is we facilitate the relationship between what you see here between the funders, that is, between individual institutions or consortia or research funders, and the infrastructure. So we're helping to put these two parties together. We facilitate that relationship with the idea that that's going to be built and it'll be a long-term relationship. So we at SCOSS, we are not a funding agency. We are facilitating putting funders together with open infrastructures. And also our mission really is to mainstream this idea that it's important to fund open infrastructure. People still may not be aware of this, that you're using these infrastructures, but there's a cost and they need to be funded. And so we're also advocating to raise awareness of the need of this funding. And on our second bullet here, we facilitating a variety of ways to support the infrastructures. So we also help to sustain their practices through improving communications, through building capacity. So the idea with SCOSS is that we're helping them to raise funds, but also helping them to thrive as an organization long-term. And so on this slide, I just want to reiterate and summarize what I've been saying, which is basically when you see this kind of stamp here, the SCOSS stamp of approval of essential infrastructures, you can be confident that these infrastructures are all non-commercial. They are they're used globally. They are essential. They are community driven, that they have a transparent governance or an accountability model. So these are all the characteristics of SCOSS endorsed infrastructures. And this is the SCOSS, and here they are, the big reveal. So we have currently 19 SCOSS endorsed infrastructures, and they span the entire research life cycle. They also include journals, books, data sets, metadata services, so a wide variety of services, and they represent a broad global footprint. So they're across the Americas, Europe, and Africa currently. And so if you're not, I really encourage you to take a close look at these different infrastructures. If any of them are not familiar with you, please you should take a look to see what they do and see if you could be working with them. So this slide here is really the same infrastructures. I just organized again in a different way to show you how they're crossing the different aspects of the research life cycle. So I'm not going to go too deeply in this. Again, you should have these slides. You can take a look at them. And so I do want to just highlight a couple of these infrastructures that are in our latest rounds to give you a sense of who they are and what they're doing. And our next speaker, Arena, is going to go a little deeper in these, so I'm just going to quickly highlight them. So Research Data Alliance, if you're doing anything with research data, this is the organization to be involved with and get to know. Software Heritage is doing an amazing job of archiving software code. So this is the code that's written, during research projects. In order to duplicate or replicate research, you need to have the code that made that research possible, and they are archiving that. Another set of infrastructures here is African Journals Online, which is an amazing organization with over 900 journals across the African continent. Epicence is an innovative organization developing a new model for publication, going directly from preprints to publication, using this, what they call the overlay model of journals. SciPost is focusing on diamond publishing for scientists. And finally, Make Data Count, which is helping to increase the visibility of data sets and finding out how people are using data. So if you have a data set, you put it online, who's using it, how are they using it, and then researchers can use that data to help make the case for the importance of their research. So all this sounds great. We've got open access, open science, open infrastructures, all these amazing organizations doing work that's supporting all this. But how is it funded if they are open and free? And we know that they are free to use, but clearly they're not for you to operate. So what are the funding models that we need to be thinking about? So this is some of them, and I've organized them in a way, and I want to highlight really the ones here today, that there's a variety of ways that we can be funding these. For example, with structural funding is where, you know, you have actually the institution or a government funder is completely funding this infrastructure, and that would be great. That is the least common way that they are funded, but would be a good stable way if it were more common. We also have philanthropic funding models. For example, with grants, many organizations get really great grants that help them do amazing projects, which is wonderful. But what infrastructures really need is operational funding, and the grants tend to be project-based. So it's, you start a project and then you're finished. But what these infrastructures really need is ongoing operational funding, which is rarely supported by philanthropic funders. And focus today is, I think, really on this community-based funding, which can be through memberships or subscriptions. So this should be a model maybe many of us are used to. So the idea is institutions, universities, libraries can join one of these infrastructures as a member or have a subscription to them. And this kind of community-based funding is really ideal because it really has the benefit of no single funder has to fund the infrastructure, but it's a collective funding that happens. And that what that leads to is it builds really a collective ownership, so that you are, yes, funding these infrastructures, but you're also a key stakeholder and a key member of these infrastructures. And so that's the goal in this community-based funding. And I just want to highlight under the earned section that this idea of in-kind contribution that we'll come back to many times today, I think, is that you all in the community can consider what kind of in-kind contribution you can be making to these organizations. For example, one could join a working group or be on their board or contribute software code to these organizations. So there's many ways to contribute beyond funds. So on this slide, we just I've sort of talked through maybe one strategy that you might think about. How do I invest in these infrastructures strategically? So the idea is that we have the SCOSS. SCOSS has, you might start with the SCOSS recommendations. We have these 19 infrastructures. You know, they've been vetted and they're trusted and they're highly used and relevant to the open science ecosystem. So you may decide to look at these infrastructures, choose 1, 2, 3, whatever works for your institution when you assess what's relevant to your researchers, what your usage is, and what aligns with your strategy or values. You may select a few of those to invest in. And the idea is to invest intentionally and collectively. So that means to be putting the investment into your regular budgets and to fund it annually as you fund any other service that your organization depends on. And so versus an ad hoc one-off funding model. And as we talk about the actual funding levels, these are what we call, these are suggested funding levels. So some of the infrastructures, they could be higher, some could even be lower. It's an individual decision of how much you contribute. But to give you just a sense of the amount, if it's a smaller institution, it might be €2,000 annually for 3 years. And although that is a large amount, it is, if one puts it in perspective of article processing fee, which can be 2,000 or 3,000 per article, you see the affordability of funding and supporting these infrastructures, which are providing these long-term services that we're all really depend upon. So we have created a lot of materials to help you to make it easier to share this information with your colleagues or with your administration to help make the case for funding these infrastructures. And these are just examples here. I will put in the chat later the links to these PDFs, but basically they're nice handouts that show you, the infrastructure, the the description, why it's important, and the funding levels that they're requesting. So this is a nice something that you can easily share with others. And finally, other materials that we've created are these handouts for specific audiences, which really, so if you're a individual institution, or if you're a library consortia or a research funder, these handouts are targeted toward you to give you an idea of how it works, how you get started, and in some cases, examples of how others have done it, so you can understand the process that others have used. And again, these also, I will put links in the chat once I'm over, once I've completed this. And finally, just to end with a summary of that we're looking for, how can you help sustain these important infrastructures? And so it's promoting, joining, funding. And again, I've been speaking a lot about funding, but it's equally important to really advocate for open infrastructure at your organization, to understand what it is and why it's important, to promote the visibility of these infrastructures. When you're making a decision about what tools to use, look to these infrastructures. They're there, they're available, they're free to use, not free to operate, obviously. You can also consider, as I say, supporting them with in-kind support, joining a working group or board, and providing and helping to advocate at your institution to repurpose your budgets from larger commercial packages into these open infrastructures as a more sustainable long-term way for your organization to support research. So with that intro, I will end. And so here's our contact information. Please consider following us on social media. And I will turn it over to Irina. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Rosalie. Good morning, everyone. Let me share my slides. And I would like to invite everyone to reflect a little bit on the role open infrastructures play in the research lifecycle, and maybe look globally. And I really like this slide, and apologies for some parts that are being cut by Zoom, but I think it's still readable. This sums up what Alvalid and Rosalie mentioned, that open infrastructures are really accountable to their communities and not to shareholders. Because they are interoperable, it's possible to build a global network of those infrastructures, interconnected services. And they are transparent in terms of their operations and governance. And if we think about research life cycle, let's maybe start with code software that Rosalie mentioned. Software heritage, which is one of SCOSS endorsed infrastructures, published in October last year, this article in Nature about importance of treating software code as a first-class citizens, not as an afterthought, and stressing that recording software, sharing software, and preserving it is really important. And in this article, they outlined some actions that different actors in research lifecycle could take. So, for example, those who are responsible for training researchers, they can train researchers how to share code. They could mandate availability of code, and that could also be done by those who publish journals. When an article is submitted to a journal, if there is an underlying software that is described in this article, publishers could require making the software available. code sharing should, of course, be incentivized in research promotion, research assessment frameworks. And then it's important to invest in software preservation, and that software preservation could either be done locally or using this software heritage initiative that is SCOSS endorsed. What's also good about software heritage that they provide some guidance materials. So for example, if you want to recommend your researchers how to archive and reference code, there is this guide that you can use and you can adjust a bit because maybe it mentions using software heritage as an example, but if you use other repositories for storing software, you can just replace that in this guide. Research data is next in research lifecycle, and would like to spend a couple of minutes talking about Make Data Count initiative because it's really developing very rapidly now, and it promotes research data as, again, first-class citizens and ensures that research data usage is tracked and used in research assessment and evaluation. It offers a data citation corpus where you can see 5 million data citations collected from data repositories, and because it's an open infrastructure, it makes outputs also openly available. So everything that Make Data Count produces is basically public domain license under Creative Commons Zero license for metadata that it provides. And this is how the citation dashboard, data citation dashboard looks for a funder. So National Institute of Health is a funder in the US. And you can see how many research data are available, like thousands of thousands, citations, views, and downloads. And I think it's an important metric for a funder because it complements metrics about research publications. This is another view of the same dashboard that Make Data Count makes available on DataCite website, and you can see citations counts by publications or publisher. So I do encourage you to dig deeper and check maybe your data publications or your journals. Also, Make Data Count produced guidance for research institutions how data evaluation could be implemented in academia. So this is one of the guides that I would recommend you to have a look at. And because Make Data Count collects data from repositories and publishers, there is also guidance available around data citations for repositories that include data and also for publishers. And they have resources for repositories and data providers how to make sure that citation information is collected from those repositories and displayed in Make Data Count. Rosalie also mentioned Research Data Alliance, which is a global collaboration initiative of data professionals. And Research Data Alliance has national and regional chapters. And you see some of them here, but I don't see anything for Middle East and North Africa yet. So maybe that's an opportunity for your region to consider forming a regional discussion group within Research Data Alliance, or just join it. And joining for individuals is free, and organizations have to pay a fee if they want to join. Then moving on to scholarly publishing, and Rosalie mentioned two Diamond Open Access Publishing initiatives that don't charge any fees, neither to authors nor readers. And one of them is Episciences, and it's a platform for open access overlay journals. And what we mean by overlay journals publish content that has originally been made available in a repository. So you can see here a list of preprint platforms or general repositories where a manuscript is made available. And then from there, Episciences picks it up, organizes peer review. Peer review could be open or could be a traditional double blind. And then when it's published, the version of the content still sits in the repository, but quality assurance happens on Episciences platform. And I think it's an interesting way how repositories could be leveraged for this type of Diamond Open Access publishing approach. And another example of Diamond Open Access publishing that SCOSS endorses in the current funding circle is SciPost, which is a platform for publishing community reviewed outputs in sciences, and they have so-called editorial colleges, communities of editors and reviewers who donate their time to reviewing manuscripts. And SciPost has an interesting way of tracking their operations and funding, and they provide country-level data based on published outputs. And what I would like to show is that, for example, for Saudi Arabia, the cost of publishing two articles in 25 was 13 euros only. So you can see how really cost efficient that platform is. And if an institution whose researchers article was published, if they would like to contribute back to SciPost, they could contribute even minimal amounts of money, and you can go to this country level data and check the numbers for your countries. And finally, for those of you who are here joining from African countries, African Journals Online is a good platform for increasing visibility of your journals. And also, if you're looking for publications in African journals, that's a good platform for you to use. So thanks a lot, and I'll be happy to answer your questions, and would like to invite Dr. Zaina now to contribute with her Arab countries perspective. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me just share my presentation. Here we go. And I want to do slide view. Here we are. All right. Just 1 second. I'm trying to, okay, here we go. Now it's working for me. Okay, good morning, everyone. And I want, okay. Sorry, it's okay. Here we go. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us this morning. And I'm very excited as this is my first participation with SCOSS. So I wanted to use this part of the webinar to kind of ground the discussion in our own regional reality. I am based in the UAE, and I wanted to just kind of talk a little bit across the Arab states, what's happening. So we know that universities in our part of the world are being pushed to increase their research output, to strengthen their rankings, to improve their international visibility, and to basically publish more openly. And those are very important goals. But on the ground, many of the researchers are feeling that pressure, and they are experiencing open access less as an openness, but more as a cost. That is why open infrastructure matters. In our context, it's not a side issue. It's directly tied to how research gets funded, how research gets published and evaluated, and how it's made visible. Guy. All right, here we go. So the tension that many researchers are feeling and are working inside is that things don't match. So they're being asked to publish more, to publish internationally, to publish in strong journals, to increasingly publish more and more open access. However, what's happening is at the same time, publishing costs are rising, the APCs are getting really ridiculously high, institutional funding is limited. It's not the same for everybody. Internal grant tools can also be very restrictive, and publishing decisions are basically, strongly shaped by quartiles and ranking for the institutions. So there is actually a strong mismatch between what the researchers are expected to do and what many institutions can sustainably support. So I think this will sound very familiar to a lot of the colleagues who are across the region who are with us this morning, because I don't think this is a one country issue. I think we're all struggling with this in the region. And so to make this very concrete, in some cases, one open access article can cost thousands and thousands of dirhams. I personally have paid through my institution, of course, really high amounts. And recently, and for active researchers, this is not a one-time issue. This is not a one-time thing. This is, it's a yearly recurring cost across the year. Those are publishing actively. So the problem is not that APCs are high, right? The problem is that payment is becoming normalized as the only route to openness. And this is, in my opinion, is a big, it's a red flag, because once that happens, once we normalize paying for articles to be published open access, then access becomes uneven very, very quickly. So it flips the coin, basically, because some researchers have grants that support them. Some researchers have institutions that have, budgets that can afford this. However, many do not. And we have to be considerate of that. So in practice, openness starts depending basically on who can get the fees approved, not on having it, open for everybody. And that's kind of a paradox in this situation. And so at the institutional level, basically, these pressures become even more visible because, for example, many universities, they support publications that are in Q1 Scopus journals because, these fees are easily justifiable. And so the institution is interested to support them. In Q2 journals with high index, researchers may need to make a case. And again, these may be supported, but the decision is not only about the scholarly quality of the work now. It becomes about policy, about budget, about internal institutional criteria. So I think many institutions in the region will recognize some version of this. All of us on this call who are from different countries in the Arab world have a version of or another of this in our own institutions. So universities do want to support research, they do, but support is often selective, and because budgets are finite, and because the demand for APC funding keeps growing. The costs are higher. More people want to publish open access, so there's more and more requests for money. So institutions are constantly making difficult choices, who to support, who not to support, and how to make those decisions. And another important part of the regional landscape is ranking. This is a big part of our reality. Researchers are not making publishing decisions in neutral systems and neutral environments. We have a lot of components to this. Quartiles matter, indexing matters, promotion criteria matters, and institutional reputation definitely matters. So when a researcher chooses where to publish, their decision is often shaped by not really only like the fit for audience on their topic, but by the performance systems and the institutional expectations. And that's how they choose the journals that they choose. So many of the journals that carry this prestige are inside the commercial publishing models. Those are the expensive journals. So the financial pressure and the ranking pressure, they start to reinforce one another. And then it becomes like a cycle. And so for me, this is a deeper concern. If we are not careful, basically, what's going to happen is we normalize a research culture in which paying to publish becomes the standard. As APCs become the routine and not the exception. Prestige is tied to commercial systems. High impact journals are expensive. Participation becomes uneven. So it's not only a budget issue. Basically, it's a structural issue because it affects who gets to publish openly and which journals institutions will support and how much influence commercial publishers have over what counts as visible or valuable research. They make that decision, not the work itself, not the researchers. It becomes part of the publishers who make that decision. So this is exactly where open infrastructure becomes very important. Open infrastructure gives us another route, another way to tackle this. It asks us to think beyond the APC as the main answer for having open research. So instead of paying article by article, we can support shared systems that make research open. We just heard my colleagues talk about this. And so it makes research more discoverable. It makes research connected. It makes research sustainable. This includes repositories, metadata systems, identifiers, publishing platforms, policy tools, and all kinds of community-led infrastructure. So the shift is not small, but it is a shift that is from transitions to systems, from dependence to stewardship, from short-term fixes, paying one APC at a time, to long-term capacity. And that is something that is very valuable for any institution. And so, in the Arab state context, this matters. This matters very much because in a practical way, many institutions in the region are trying to strengthen their research output and global presence. And at the same time, but not all institutions, again, have the same level of budgeting. Not all institutions have the same funding and the same policy flexibility, or even the same support structures. It depends even within the same country, not even from one country to another. So open infrastructure helps because it supports the foundations of research visibility and access in a more collective way. And it can widen participation. definitely, because more institutions and researchers can engage with open research, regardless of the APC budgets. It can strengthen research, the visibility and discoverability. Absolutely. It can reduce dependence on pay-to-publish models, and it can help the institutions invest in systems rather than individual researcher publication transactions. So in the long run, this is very beneficial for institutions as a whole. And so I think this is the question we all need to be thinking and to keep in front of us. How do we support the systems that make research open, visible, and sustainable? Of course, researchers need support. Of course, institutions will continue to make funding decisions around APCs, but that cannot be the whole strategy and that cannot be sustainable. The better question is whether we are also investing in systems. If we keep paying, one second, my screen froze, sorry. Okay, so the better question is whether we are investing in the systems that make this openness possible for us. Are we supporting the systems that make it more sustainable for us? We're not trying just to survive this now. This should not be a short-term thing we're trying to cope with. It should be something that we are really thinking about to change the system, to improve the system. And so finally, I want to close with this question. What kind of openness are we building? Are we building a system where researchers can participate only when the funding is there? What about when the funding is not there? Are we building a system where researchers can participate when the journal quartile fits? But we know that a lot of practitioner journals are not in the quartiles, or when the APCs can be justified. So are we helping build a system where openness is supported through shared infrastructure, collective investment, and community responsibility? I think for me, this is why open infrastructure matters in the Arab world. This is why it's so necessary in our context. It's about sustainability, it's about equity, it's about visibility, and the future shape of research in our region. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Zaina. That was really great. And thank you, Rosalie and Irina, for your presentations as well. So we now have time reserved for open discussions and questions and answers. And for the audience, if you haven't already done so, please add your questions. We have one so far. We'll come to that in a second. And we really love to hear your thoughts and address your specific challenges. So to get things started, I have a question for Rosalie, and then we'll see how things go. And please, like all other my fellow panelists, please feel free to ask questions as well. We want to make this interactive, but I'll start with Rosalie. And so first of all, thank you so much for explaining what SCOSS does and what open infrastructure means. And maybe something for the audience to keep it also in mind, and this is where my question comes in. What does it mean for an open infrastructure to be endorsed or selected by SCOSS? And what kind of signal does that kind of imply for kind of the community, as in signal in sense of action to be taken?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that question. I touched on it a little bit in my talk, just to reiterate that we have a pretty rigorous process. We're actually in it right now, where we're reviewing applications from infrastructures. So in order to become a SCOSS endorsed infrastructure, they do go through a pretty rigorous process of we looking at their all their financial standing, their strategic planning, how open are they, how globally used are they. That's very important to us, that we are serving a global audience with the infrastructures, that they're crossing disciplines. So we look at all these aspects of the infrastructure, and also that they have a need for funding, obviously. And so what that does, I think, it is one marker for the community to know that any of the infrastructures that I showed earlier on my slides, and I just want to interject, several have asked, the slides will be made available and the answer was in the chat, that they will be, subtitles will be added and the slides will be made available. So if you missed any URLs in there, you can get them later. But and so the idea is that, yeah, when you look at any of those infrastructures that have been SCOSS endorsed, you can be confident that they are contributing to the vision that Dr. Zaina shared with us, which I really appreciated that description of investing in systems and not just transactions, that's fundamentally a way to say it, and I really appreciate that. So when you look at any of the SCOSS endorsed, you know that they have been vetted and they are ones that you could support and be confident in that.
Thanks, Rosalie. And that kind of brings me to the question from the audience that we have. So the question is from Abdurrahim. In contexts where infrastructure and funding are still limited, what are the most practical first steps institutions can take to start supporting and advocating for open infrastructure? The question is, okay, let's say we recognize open infrastructure is important, we have this SCOSS endorsement. What are the next kind of practical steps, especially in the light that maybe funds could be limited? And Irina, please, you have your hands.
For the question, yeah. And I would like to build an answer on Dr. Zaina's talk. I think it's important to be strategic and maybe start asking questions. What are the infrastructures that you need in your library, in your institution, in your country? What are your needs, and how open infrastructures could respond to those needs? Then evaluate which open infrastructures are available for you to use. And I would like to stress once again that all infrastructures we're talking here about are free to use. Funding we are discussing is just to support their operations, but you don't need to pay to use them. So then your next step is to see whether there are global infrastructures that you can use, and you can start with SCOSS endorsed infrastructures because they are well described, they checked for quality, operations, etc. Or you might also check your local infrastructures because maybe your local infrastructures would serve your needs better because of specific languages, for example, in your country. And then when you have that, when you know what you need, when you know what is available, then you can see how you can contribute, and that contribution could be even little funding if you have little, or even in kind, as it was mentioned today, by contributing with helping those infrastructures operate. And maybe my colleagues would like to add something.
Thank you, Irina.
If I may add, so a meaningful contribution, it should be one that is consistent and it reflects intention. It doesn't have to be a huge amount, right? It could be modest annual contribution. It can be support for one key service. So it can be participation in a shared funding effort, or even institutional advocacy that helps normalize this kind of support. So meaningful contributions are really about being part of the solution. You know, it's meaningful support also includes visibility, naming the infrastructures you support, explaining why these infrastructures matter, and helping normalize this part of the, responsible scholarly stewardship. We need to shift that conversation. Really, we cannot we cannot keep paying for our research. Honestly, we have to reframe the conversation. We need to shift, from free to use to essential to sustain. I think this is very important, because if we circle back to Al-Walid, and he started, it's part of our legacy, our written work, our heritage. It's part of especially in this part of the world where, we are collective societies, we have so much culture. We need to keep this. We need to preserve this, and this is very, very important.
Thank you, Dr. Zaina. Now, what's great about Forum is that, like in the audience, that we have so many different kind of, let's say, stakeholders, from librarians to kind of research funders and etc. And maybe my question is for kind of my SCOSS colleagues, who should be kind of responsible for funding open science infrastructure? I know like librarians are the first ones to kind of go in and say, okay, this is something that we feel responsible to do, and that's how we feel, at least at Qatar National Library. But the question is, who should be responsible for this? Is it a collective? Is it, should it be like, I mean, I guess it is a collective, of course, but effort, but like, I'm curious to know kind of your thoughts on this topic. Yeah, please feel go ahead. Like, no need to raise hands, just go ahead. I think we should just have
Okay.
like
So
a free conversation.
I would say governments, funders, libraries, institutions, everybody is responsible because open science infrastructures is a shared it's a shared good. It makes sense that everybody is responsible for it. Like no single group should be expected to carry the whole burden of support. Governments, funders, libraries, institutions, they all benefit. They all benefit from having a healthier research ecosystem. And so they should all have a role in sustaining such an ecosystem. So, like SCOSS frames this as a collective cost sharing challenge. And so it's not something that one person should carry alone.
Thank you. Yeah,
I mean,
Irina, I think you have.
I think there is also a role for National Library Consortia or other national organized groups that already pay for e-resources. Because what we see across the world, that more and more those groups who were formed to pay for access to scholarly journals, they start more and more supporting open infrastructures as well. So maybe also if you are from that kind of body, or if you are from a research funding agency that allocate some money for research projects, maybe you could consider how open infrastructures could also be included in your operations.
And that's very interesting to say. I mean, I can just add, like, from our perspective, that's something that we've been trying to think about for some time. We do have a consortium here in Qatar. The thing is, we don't actually charge any services for the consortium. So, I mean, if we did, I mean, I think some of the consortium members are here, so if we did, that's something that we can ask for, like an additional cost for open infrastructure. But what we also trying to figure out is that, we have these publishing agreements, and part of the publishing agreements is that we have these discounts. So, for example, just at the top of my mind, like Biomed Central or Frontiers or MDPI, we have these agreements with them, and we have anywhere from 5 to 15% discounts. Theoretically, we can actually reallocate some of these savings to open infrastructure. But again, it's just a matter of kind of internal processes that we're trying to figure out. But we do have the intention, and maybe that's something others can think about. I'm sure like other consortia have done a very similar approach. Now, maybe like the question I would have now for kind of the panelists is that maybe a practical question first, and maybe Irina, you can help me out here, because if I'm interested to knowing more about an open infrastructure, because I know like you're on the advisory board and you deal, I mean, you're in contact, or at least Rosie also, you're also in contact with them. Can institutions just plainly contact the infrastructure and ask for more information? Let's say, for example, I want to know more about a specific infrastructure and how that helps and supports my kind of institution. Can I contact them? Or where can I get this information from? Is it through SCOSS? What's the recommendation?
I think maybe start with SCOSS website and see what's available, what kind of information about those infrastructures is available on the SCOSS website. Then also check the websites of those open infrastructures that you're interested in. And on the SCOSS website, so there are contact details of people in those open infrastructures who will be happy to answer your questions. And I think open infrastructures would also appreciate this kind of interaction, because they want to hear from you. They want to know whether they are useful for you or not. They also want to know what else they can do for you as researcher, research institution.
So please don't hesitate to get in touch with them, browse their websites. Usually they have well organized websites where you can find a lot of information. And also what I'm always doing, I'm signing up for newsletters because there are so many developments going on that it's really hard to keep track of everything. So if there is a newsletter that Open Infrastructure offers, sign up for it and you will receive updates not only about this infrastructure, but also related news and updates about developments in this research area.
Thanks, Irina. So, Rosalie, yeah.
Yeah, I just to echo to confirm that you can certainly I put some links in the chat, and you can certainly reach out to the infrastructures directly. I encourage you to do that. They are always interested to hear from the community. That's the point of how they run. They are responsive to the community and what is needed from the community. So I do encourage you to reach out directly to them, and also through our website or directly on their website. Yes.
Thanks. I'm seeing some questions about open access and kind of open access funding. And Dr. Zain, I'll come back. I'll ask you some questions about some of this in a second. But maybe there's one question that from Dr. Apologies if I mispronounce it, Dr. Evangel Obim. And maybe Rosalie can help us answer that. So the question is like, I would like to know the benefits and opportunities accrued or kind of received by the infrastructure that are endorsed by SCOSS. What makes them want to apply to SCOSS? And please, I mean, others, please feel free to jump in if you have any comments.
I think being a SCOSS endorsed infrastructure has a variety of benefits. I mean, one, definitely we help to raise the visibility of those infrastructures. We once they're endorsed, that kind of gets the community to, we've been around since 2017, so people look out for every year, what are the newest endorsed infrastructures? So we definitely raise their visibility, and kind of globally in regions maybe that weren't previously familiar with them. We also, of course, help them to get funding. So we do raise funds for them. We don't fund them because we're not a funding organization, but we do put them in touch with consortia or others who have funded in the past. So they definitely get a very concrete benefit of funding while they're at SCOSS infrastructure. And then we hope that funding, once initiated with SCOSS, will continue on. That's the goal, because they have to be continually sustained, not just a one-time funding. So I think it's really getting a recognition from the community and a visibility that they didn't have maybe previously, and also this very concrete funds to help them become more sustainable.
Thanks, Rosalie. I'll move on to kind of open access publishing. I think that's something that the audience would love to hear more about. Dr. Zaina, you've talked about the Q1 and the Q2, and this is something at least I hear about every day. Why? Because we have a fund, and why aren't you just supporting Q1? Why are you doing this? Like, we have limited funding, so why are you putting money in here and there? And of course, our answer is always that it's the choice of the researcher to decide which journal is best suited for them. But of course, we work in an ecosystem that pushes for certain things when it comes, for example, to ranking and all the university stuff. And my question really is about Diamond, because I know with Form and even with SCOSS, there's a lot of kind of focus and support for kind of Diamond open access publishing. And basically with Diamond is where, there is no everything is open access, you can read it for free, but also there isn't a fee. It's not for free, publishing isn't for free, but the fee isn't paid by the author themselves. So my question, Dr. Zia, do you think this, what is your kind of thoughts on Diamond publishing in general in our region? And is that something that you think could work? Because, and just kind of point is that a lot of the infrastructure that we're also thinking about today feed into this ecosystem. They can make Diamond open access work. So I was curious about your thoughts about this topic.
I think with Diamond open access, I think it's very important because it promotes equity. It's very equitable, I think. And it is community driven and it is non-profit publishing. And the journals are supported by universities, libraries, societies, rather than the commercial publishers. I think, where neither the author pays to publish, nor the readers, nor the libraries pay to access the content. It's ideal. It's really ideal because it's making the research available. This is it. It's making the research available. And I understand that, for academics and for publications and journal portals is directly related to our promotion. So there is no really messing around with it. You need to hit those promotion guidelines. Regardless of if I put aside, the institutional rankings. For me as an academic, for my own career, for my own, this is directly related to my promotion and maybe even my annual evaluation. The pressure is immense, honestly. And so I understand when sometimes researchers choose journals, solely is it Q1 or Q2? And then sometimes people end up paying from their own pockets for this because in the end they look at, what's the value for this for me? But this can't be the way. I mean, this is really wrong. So that's why like Diamond open access, it's something we should stand behind. Yes.
Thank you for that. And it's also like one thing I want to mention is that when even just look at commercial publishers, right, who like charge APCs and everything, just for the audience, and I want to reiterate this, they also rely on open infrastructure, right? So it's not, this is like when it comes to like the open policy finder from JISC or the DOAJ or like the open ROR, so this is the Register for Organizational, I should know, the ROR. They also depend on this. So I think like the whole ecosystem relies on this. This is something that we should take into account. My question, maybe kind of before we go into another kind of details of the audience's questions, is that what if we don't take any action now, right? What happens? What will happen if? One thing to keep in mind is that also I think with my time from SCOSS is that there hasn't been much of an appetite for funding infrastructure from this region. Now, of course, one explanation is that this maybe we just need to raise awareness about the infrastructure. That's what we're doing today, and hopefully, by kind of attending kind of the forum event conference last year and doing these webinars, we can raise awareness, and there should be more appetite, and hopefully that's the case. But one thing, maybe it's like two-part question to the kind of my fellow panelists. What can we do to kind of raise awareness right now? But two, this is kind of the question, what happens if we don't take any action?
Yeah, I can just, well,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, you go ahead.
To be very concrete, I believe that things will just get more and more expensive. That is the thing with open. It's not that open infrastructure is quote unquote cheap, but because they are not driven by profit, they do cost less. And we use many of these. We all use DSpace, open journal systems, DOAJ. Every day we're using them. And if those were to go away, or Archive, which is the physics preprint server, the system, you can't imagine our research how it would suffer from not having these infrastructures, and then the suffering will be on the libraries and universities because they will pay more. That's a very bottom line solution. And then what kind of world do we want? Dr. Zaina was beautifully described this world of like, what kind of research world do we want? We want one that's open and accessible to everyone. Do we want a closed one where we can't even get our own information back? It's locked in systems. So we really run a risk of not this open access movement that started over 20 years ago of completely coming to a stop. It's a real risk for sure.
Absolutely. I think if we fail to invest now, I think we risk ending up with a much weaker and less equitable research system. It's already not very equitable because there are a lot of institutions and a lot of nations who don't have access and don't have funding. But I think we could see a lot of important services disappear, and there would be more dependence on the commercial public platforms, and fewer community governed alternatives. So over time, absolutely, I agree with Rosalie. This is going to make research way more expensive, less open, and harder for many institutions, especially those who have fewer resources, to access and to contribute. So the open access ecosystem becomes way more vulnerable.
And I would also add the issue of Arabic language because unfortunately, many commercial systems don't really work well for Arabic language, and some open infrastructures work well, and some might not be working that well as you would want them to work. And that's another reason why Arab states should be engaged in open infrastructures to express your needs, to highlight that content should be displayed not only from left to right, but from right to left, etc. Because I think they would need to hear your wish lists, and if you also have a way to contribute a little bit how those developments could be implemented, I think the benefits would be for you as a region and also for us who are trying to build a multilingual research environment where all research in all languages is valued and not only research written and published in English language.
Thanks, Irina, for that. I guess something that also Rosalie mentioned in the presentation, contribution doesn't necessarily mean providing funding, which would be great, and that's something I know each institution would have to think about strategically and try to do that. But contribution could also mean providing time, either volunteering or providing even a comment on why this thing we would want, like a wish list. And the Arabic language is something, that's something that we need more support of. We need to see more Arabic language content, whether it's articles, academic, non-academic, traditional, non-traditional, online more. And I believe kind of the open infrastructure ecosystem allows for that to flourish, away from, let's say, kind of the go-to commercial solutions that we have in mind. So the more support that we have for open infrastructure, the more that we can achieve kind of our own strategic goals. From QNL's perspective, we always get the questions, why do we fund open access? And yes, it's great to support and to remove financial barriers from access and make everything easily accessible, even including monographs, which I know some of the audience here would like to know more of. But the one of the reasons, as I mentioned also in my slide, is that licensing and copyright. We believe that the more kind of support we can have for English language or what is basically being published right now, we can translate into Arabic. And this is kind of something that we want to do on the long term. So for the audience, keep in mind, it's not just contribution in money, time, and like even comments and feedback. And maybe I can just answer. Okay, I think the question for monographs is being answered by Emily. Thank you, Emily. I want the audience to kind of, before I kind of wrap up things, Dr. Zaina, Irina, Rosalie, do you have any last kind of comments that you would like to add before I can kind of inform the audience about the actions they need to take?
I think it's important to remember open infrastructure, it may be open and it may be free to use, but it's not free to sustain. And that's why, we all benefit from it. And so I think it should be a shared responsibility to keep it alive. And that's why it's very important to be, to think about investing in this.
Thank you, Dr. Zaina.
Also, maybe to add that SCOSS endorsed infrastructures also build community governance structures, and there is a way for you to be part of working group, advisory boards, other types of governing structures of those infrastructures, and when you see call for members, please consider responding, consider participating, and if you're contributing, then you will have an opportunity to join one of the governing bodies, and you can steer the directions of those infrastructures according to your needs.
Thank you. So I think we are about kind of at the end of this session, and hi, Emily. Just for the audience, things to keep in mind. Questions like, how can you support open infrastructure? Think about kind of the infrastructure that you use and what kind of support it needs. Think about the question is, what action can you take? What can you do? Whether it's from funding to kind of supporting in time or being part of the government's. Questions to ask is, do you have an open access policy or even an open science policy in your institution? If not, how can you have one? Do you have maybe an open access committee or something that can support your institution making such decisions? That's something we started having like since 2 months ago. Now we have kind of a national open access committee kind of to make these decisions to support QNL. Think about that, and the first thing you should do is visit the SCOSS website. I mean, Rosalie, Emily, and Irina, thank you for adding all these links, wonderful links. So I asked the audience to kind of check out these links, find out more about SCOSS, try to read more about the different infrastructure, and hopefully we can have a follow-up conversation in the near future where we can also talk about kind of progress and how things look from this region again. And I just want to say thank you kind of to Forum for allowing us to kind of giving us the space and kind of platform to discuss this very important issue. And over to you, Emily.
There we go. Apologies if someone makes noises. Thank you so much, all of you. That was such a rich and thought-provoking panel and so many different angles covered. And I think that will hopefully really help our community, both those of you who were kind enough to join us today, but also everyone who will watch the recordings over the coming months and year, really start to get to grips with this infrastructure angle, which is, as you highlighted, Al-Walid, something that hasn't really been fully addressed and engaged with in the region, which is why we were so keen to partner with SCOSS this year and really try and push over an infrastructure. So thank you, all of our lovely speakers, for sharing your insights. Hush, little one. So in addition, for our delegates who are here and attending online, if you could take the time, I know you get bombarded with surveys all the time, and I know that they're a pain, but if anyone who can spare 1 or 2 minutes can copy this QR code and take the survey, it's really helpful for us because it helps us identify areas where you feel that we should be hosting events over the coming year, and also what you feel works about this event and what maybe we need to change. So it's always a learning curve. We're always keen to improve, but also, as I said, we really want to make sure that we are hosting events that really speak to and resonate to all of you and address the problems and questions that you have. So please do take the time to fill this in. Rima, if you could skip to the next slide. Full membership, for those of you who don't know, membership is free, which is always nice. It's also institutional. So if any of your institutions would like to join Form, we also operate at a departmental level. So it could be that the library joins Form if the whole university doesn't want to. Please do have a look. We don't ask you to do anything other than be pro open science in its myriad forms. And if you're here attending this event, presumably you are already quite enthusiastic about open science, so you might enjoy being a member. So do have a look at the website and see, and we're always happy to discuss that in more detail. And finally, I think we have one more slide. Rima, if you could skip to the next one. Have a look at some of our next events coming up. We have a really great array of events coming up, covering so many topics in the next few months. So please do visit the website and have a look. Sorry, someone's getting hungry. And have a look at what we've got coming up. And we hope to see many of you with us in the coming events. And as Rosalie mentioned, and we commented on in the chat already, the recording of this event will be available shortly once we've added the Arabic subtitles. So thank you again so much to all of you for attending, and thank you to all of our lovely panelists. We are, as always, hugely grateful for your generosity and time generosity in giving us time. Sorry, it's ravenous and it's 3 months old. he doesn't really understand about the importance of open science quite yet. So thank you everyone very much, and we'll hopefully see you all very soon.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you, everybody.
you.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Have a
Bye.
good day.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Thank you.